Okay, thank you. Pauline Spadafora is a professor of English at the City College of New York. She has published several works of nonfiction, among which is the Dear Sister, an important sociological and historical record of her family, who wrote letters to her sister in Sicily during World War II, before and after. Today, she has written a fiction, the first of her fiction, and it's called Louise Place. It's a novella, and I'm glad to have her here today.
Oh, thank you, Vito.
You're welcome. Everything was okay with the other program, the other
Oh, it was
interview we
wonderful.
had?
It was enjoyable, and it's good to see you again.
How's the assistant doing?
Quite well. It had a good run. It did, really.
Oh,
It had
yeah?
a very good run, and I think it's not finished yet.
You know, we have two things in common. We both went to high school, in the same high school,
Yeah.
Washington Irving High School, only that you went in the day, I went at night, and also at City College. You taught there for many years?
I taught at CUNY for many years. It's 28 years. I just retired in 2012. I've just retired.
Tell me, with this new novella, what is it about? Tell me.
Well, Louise Place is about 5 young Italian-American girls in the 50s, and their epic story and what went on at that time.
Time of innocence, I guess.
It was a time of innocence. It's exactly what it was, and that's what I wrote about.
And as the girls grow, so grow the issues of the place, history.
And the innocence goes.
And the innocence
goes.
And the novella goes up to the end, almost.
It does.
It shows
It does.
life and death, happiness, and
All of the things we unfortunately have to.
So where does it take place?
It takes place in Thompson Street in Greenwich Village. And there's Thompson, Cornelia, all of the areas of Greenwich Village, Prince, Spring, and so on.
And it starts when?
It starts in, well, I started in 1953, but it sort of moves to 1954 very quickly. So it is 1954.
And the
Greenwich
main
Village.
character was just about...
Mimi.
Mimi was just about 13?
She was about 13, yes. She was going to be 14 that summer.
So tell me, this Mimi comes from Brooklyn, as I
Yes, she
understand.
does.
This is pure fiction.
Yes.
You smile. So it comes from Brooklyn. Why does it come from Brooklyn? And she goes to live in
the village. Well,
lucky girl, because not many people do that.
Can have a chance.
I used to envy people who lived in the village.
Mimi was a dancer, and she was going to performing arts for a while, and she was living with her father in Brooklyn. And unfortunately, her father died, and she didn't have a mother. So her sister and a brother of hers were living on Thompson Street in the village. So therefore, she went to the village to stay with them.
And the Louise Place was a get-together place?
There was a
like
candy store
fountain?
right downstairs from Thompson Street. It was, of course, not called Louise Place.
But it
I had to
does really
fictionalize
exist.
it. It existed. It certainly existed at the time. I changed the name.
You changed the names,
I
of course,
did.
of course, of course. So the story, it deals with these 4 girls,
5 girls.
five
yes.
girls, and they all have, they begin as little girls, basically.
Exactly.
Opening up
14
in the
and up,
world
yes.
and pretending to be
Movie stars and
movie
whatever.
stars and things like that.
Yeah,
and then life evolves
yes.
to the point where there's some happiness, there's some... the girls grow basically together for a few years,
Yes,
right?
and then they grow apart, and then there's
Obviously.
tragedy, of course. Yes.
And there is tragedy, life and death, and happiness. And we talked about the village.
Yes.
Now, this was an interesting historical, you cannot say, they're also historical, because
Yes.
from the image that these girls have of themselves, full of themselves, self-aggrandizement, hoping,
Yes.
and talk about some
Yeah.
some subject which I think I found a very girlish sort of subject, like
quite.
keeping virginity.
Keeping the virginity. The blessed Virgin should keep
For a boy,
a virgin till
usually
18.
at that age, I was wondering how come boys were full of sexual drives and girls were always so cool, and now here basically comes that it's not so.
It's a big change.
It's a big change. Now I forget what I was trying to say, but as the girls grow, so we see the world around them. Before we see only the girls, but we see how the girls, let's say the fashion, how the girls dressed.
Yes.
I thought it several times came out about the fashion, and through that fashion alone, you see the changes that were taking place in real life.
Right, from the full skirts with the crinolines and all the different types, and the hairdos, and it was, and we saw the chimes, the changes.
But also, other aspects. For example, you talk about the Lindy, the dances and the music, the jukebox.
Yes. That was
were you conscious when you're writing about the time, trying to input some things from the outside that led to the reader approximately where he is now and it's a story?
Yes.
Because they were injected in, and I think that to anybody who lived that time, which I did, immediately understood what
Absolutely,
you were doing. Today, jukeboxes, they don't exist.
They don't exist.
The
They don't
Lindy,
exist. And the malteds and the
Hard and
different
Hearted.
things. Yes, One and Hearted.
Yeah,
They were putting the coins in. It was so much fun.
Was that on purpose? I mean, you did put it in consciously?
I did. I consciously put it in, yes.
The writers?
Yes. And I do remember those things in the area. Doing it, being part of that.
Mm-hmm. I was reading only maybe a month ago. I was reading Mario Puzo's The Fortunate Pilgrim. Actually, I was rereading it, and it reminded me so much of the same village he was describing in The Fortunate Pilgrim. The 29th, 30th Street, 34th Street, and 10th Avenue.
Okay.
But that was a different...
Hell's Kitchen, yeah. I think
it was maybe 20, 30 years early that he was describing, but he was describing basically the same areas. And I was noticing the difference between the world that you present and the world that Mario Puzo presented. Those, the youth of that time was basically people with no hopes. They had to work because they had to keep the family. They were really immigrants. They were poor, ignorant, and did not aspire too much because the world was pressing upon them. And one of them, I think, even became some sort of delinquent. Yours, instead, the youth of your world here is changed, totally changed. And I guess it reflects the reality of the times.
Yes.
A generation after, here you are, girls who, even though the girl doesn't have a mother, still enjoys life, going to the parties and wants to be a girl and wants to do things and has aspirations. So did you try to convey the world that you were finding yourself in? I guess it reflects that kind of...
It is. And even though it's a book of fiction, you know very well
of course,
that fiction is based on truth, otherwise it wouldn't be a good reading book. And I absolutely thought of the characters and remembered the friends that I was with. And, you know, Mimi was my nickname, so there's nothing to hide there.
Nothing to hide was yours.
And I was from Brooklyn.
And who was the Flower?
Flower was my very best girlfriend. Her name was really Roseanne. And we met, and I wrote the book. And I remember, when I first was writing this, she used to say when I wrote Dear Sister, oh, stop writing those books. Write something about us. Come on, write something about us. So I started to write, and I used to read it to her on the phone. Unfortunately, she died. I mean, it was a shock, 2012. And I said, I have to get this book out, at least for Flower. That was her nickname, the Flower. And it did, and it's in her memory. It's in her memory.
Talk to me about the other girl, Midbush.
Middlebush.
Middlebush.
Oh, that was true.
That was
true. It was really a friend of mine who actually did die 3 weeks after Roseanne died, right in that time. But her name was, well, I didn't give you her name, but we called her. It was true. She had come home, she had pains in her stomach, and her doctor said some kind of thing that was happening because she had her menstrual period. And she told us what it was called. It was some sort of a medical name. We didn't understand it. We called her Middlebush, and the name stayed. She was Middlebush.
A good metaphor.
A metaphor.
I think that is a story that could be developed because from what I read, I think there must be a lot of sad story with this lady also, the character, the way it ended and all that. There was Olive.
Olive.
What is it?
Well, Olive was based and someone I did not like. And Olive was my arch enemy. She liked the same boyfriend that I did, and she gave me a very hard time. So I had to put her somewhere and give her a really hard time in the book. I mean, we're allowed to do that when we write, aren't we?
But it wasn't so bad. I mean, it showed the destiny. These girls together,
Right.
having basically the same dreams.
Right.
Of being somebody, and all of a sudden reality sets in, and each one has her own
Exactly.
destiny, her
Yes,
own route
yes,
to go
yes.
to, and so she became a
Porn star.
porn star.
She made it to Hollywood. Nobody else.
At least she made it to Hollywood.
Yes, she did.
Okay, now I understand that this is a novella.
Yes.
What is the difference between a novella and a short story, for example? You teach, you taught.
I did teach short stories. Well, a short story would be a little bit shorter, and it would be part of a book of short stories. And I thought I would have a short story with Louise Place, and then I started just developing the characters. Originally, it was going to be a little bit about each character in a group of short stories, and then I thought this is not working for me, and I put it into one, and it's the novella that it is.
Yeah, I noticed that you also changed from the point of view of Beamy.
I did that.
Sometimes you go to the point of view of the other girls.
I did that.
Also. I think that
that
was a good, because then you could get into the personal aspects of.
And I left it open at the end so that if I ever wanted to write again, I would continue. So it's an open ending. And that's how I wanted it to be.
Well, the open-ended, it's basically, it's not troublesome, but it is, in a way, trying to understand life and accepting for what it is.
Yeah.
You don't know in the story if it ends happy or unhappy.
Exactly.
It's just a question mark. What is going to be?
Exactly.
What is going to be?
Exactly.
So not many people write today novella. Of course, novella is it's an Italian word for something new. And it is a new genre. It is considered a new genre. Before the short story existed, I think a novella was there.
I believe so.
The main character, I think, the characteristic from the Italian novel is that in a novella, basically there is one actor or one character who develops, and everything is around it. With a novel, the world goes around.
Exactly.
Everything is open. So with a novella, in a sense, you restrict yourself to one specific group of people, very small group of people, one person. And I think you did a wonderful job, because
Thank you.
You can actually see from the beginning almost to the end of life cycle. You can see just about everything. It's very short, very concise, and yet it's there.
Thank you.
Now many people like to write a novella. How come you chose a novella? It just grew out of, or you had the idea of...
I was writing and writing and writing, and I thought it was a lot larger than this.
What
when
could
I
have
saw it
become
was
a
smaller.
novella, a novel?
Exactly. I think, honestly, Vito, I intended it to go further, and then when these people were dying, I panicked, and I wanted to finish this before anybody else that I knew at the time would die, and I think I sort of cut it short. And I thought, well, I can always have an addition to this,
Yeah,
another
it was
part.
concise. So it could become a novel.
Absolutely, it could have been a novel.
Now, there are basically, even though the novella is almost unheard of today, it's rare. And the way I see it, maybe even editors don't like to publish because it's short. And
It's short.
I think because it's short, people feel that maybe it's not valuable. But in fact, there have been several serious writers who wrote novellas. For example, I found that John Steinbeck,
Yes,
of
it's a novella,
Mice
right?
and Men, that's
right.
a novella. So it is not that it is unknown, it is just that sometimes we don't hear of. Truman Capote's Breakfast
Right.
at Tiffany's also. And then Ernest Hemingway, The Old
He did
Man and the
novellas,
Sea.
yeah.
So these are basically
It
a very important work. So it becomes a jewel, like a short story. It has a specific construction now, but then you can do it. So tell me, did it take a long time? I know you were under pressure.
I was under pressure. It didn't take as long as Dear Sister. I think that when I first spoke to you 4 years ago, I was first working on it. So I would say it's 4 years.
4 years.
4 years before I actually got it to work. Oh, that's long enough.
And you think this could be made into a movie?
Absolutely.
Especially it's at the Village. I mean, that's
Absolutely.
precious times.
Absolutely. I would love it.
I identified myself with, even though I never lived in the Village. My grandfather used to live in, what is it called? Anyway, he also married a girl from outside the neighborhood, just as it happened.
Outside of the neighborhood, right. Oh,
My
that's good.
grandmother came from 116th Street, from Harlem.
Yeah, Harlem, yeah.
The same thing. Tell me, do you have anything that you plan to explore in writing?
Well, a friend of mine was very interested in this book. He's also a writer. He does mostly poetry. He's pretty good, Jack. And he said, you know, we should look into this as a screenplay. And he wants to help me develop it because I've never written a screenplay, and he has. So that's something for me to think about. And also, I think about maybe adding another area to this. The girls are grown up, and everything is grown, whoever's left, and what happens to Mimi and the next part of her life. So there are some things I'll never stop. The pen
Maybe
is
the
quick.
screenplay, somebody else should do it so
Oh,
that
yeah.
you can develop some
Yeah.
other things.
That would be great.
Now, did you do any writing while you were teaching?
Yeah, I did. I wrote when I was at I was college. I wrote the speech book. I wrote the book on Virginia Woolf. So I did publish. I did publish. And Dear Sister did so well. I was so happy with that because the president of my college, they used that book for the students, for many of the students, and that was
They
the
did.
first time they ever used any Italian book in that college. And it was used. I was so
that's
excited
very,
about
very
that.
valuable because not too many people wrote letters. Actually, there was a time when we all wrote letters. I remember, as I was saying, at 13, I was already in Venezuela as an immigrant, and I used to write a lot to my mother. But the question is, where are those letters?
Yeah.
You were lucky in preserving
I was
them.
excited
and seeing
because,
the value.
you know, there were so many immigrants. I was at LaGuardia College for 28 plus years. And there were so many immigrants there. That's what the school is made up of. And they read about everyone. And I thought, gee, why not read about the Italian immigration, about what happened to the Italians? And Dear Sister was also about a woman, about a struggle, about the World War II. It had so many different factors to make it really enjoyable. Students started to love it. And that's when the president said, you know what, this is a good thing. I had an award, and everybody started using the book. It did so very well. And then, of course, I wrote it in Italian. I did write the book in Italian. It's
You write in
it's kind
Italian?
of sorella. I had some help with it, but I think you know Leah Brunetti. She helped me with it. Leah, yes.
Yeah, that's good. But I think that work has more value here in America.
It does. It did not do as well, and you have to go to
Yeah,
Italy
you
and start pushing.
Make it
Yeah, yeah.
available to other people because it's an important work. Well, and I hear that you're also doing or plan to do readings and things like that. You're
I
going to be
am.
very active.
I am. I'm looking forward to it. Yes.
Hmm. Would you like to read the
I will. I'll read some.
passage?
I shall. Yes, of course.
Set the stage for us. Where are we here?
I think on page 8, the bottom of page 8, I would like to talk a little bit about the rituals that the Italian Americans had on Sunday. I thought that was a really nice place to read from. And it's on the bottom of page 8. Can you see that?
Yep.
Okay. Every Sunday, without fail, Flower and I would go to the Vesuvio Bakery on Prince Street. It had a lime green storefront that could not be missed, and the aroma from the bakery pulled us in. They sold the best bread, rolls, pastries. It was a Sunday treat, and each of us would buy a bag of rolls to take home to our families and a hot roll to munch on after church. It was a ritual for the two of us. We went to Sunday Mass at 9 a.m., then headed to the Vesuvio Bakery for hot bread and rolls, then home again until about 5. Sundays for our Italian families were always a special food day. We ate dinner between 2 to 3 p.m. It was always pasta, meat sauce, braciole, meatballs, roasted chicken, roasted potatoes, and a salad. Sometimes my sister would make the homemade ravioli. I would buy the dough for her at Raffetto's pasta store. She would lay the dough out on the bed over big plastic covers and then stuff the squares. Then I would take a Joe's after my lunch, get up, change into me Levi's, go over to see Flower, and we would decide how to spend the rest of Sunday. Since school was still not out, we had to be home by 9 p.m. So we would either see a movie over on 12th Street at the Loews Sheridan, or just walk around and hang out, excuse me, by the Little Red Schoolhouse on Bleecker Street. Nancy lived on Bleecker, so if she was free, she'd join us. It was now 1954, and the summer stretched before us with the promise of fun-filled days and sultry nights, as visions of endless hours stirred my young and vivid imagination. The feast of St. Anthony was over, and soon school would be over too. Like a rainbow filled with vibrant colors, we were all lit up from within, just thinking of all the free time ahead, with nothing to worry about except what to wear and who to make out with. I thought back to the feast that was celebrated on Sullivan Street and all the fun I had with my friends. Flower and I would go into St. Anthony's Church to light candles for ourselves and pray to the Blessed Mother for great fun with our boyfriends that night.
Well, of course, if we know that all these braciole and meatballs at the time, they were not so popular around the world. In New York, basically only Italians used
Right
to.
in the village.
You know, this is a book that Scorsese should pick up.
I wish.
I would send him a copy.
Oh.
Yeah, because I think he loves New York City. I mean, he has done several movies on, and I think this could open up a world. The village
I
is the
love
heart
it.
of New York and the heart of the world, in a sense. So tell me, as I understand, you are going to read some part of the book on the next couple of weeks
On
from
the
now?
27th, yes.
Where are you going?
There is an Italian festival going on in Smithtown. They have it once a year. And they
Smithtown
have,
Historical Society
Yes, yes.
Fairgrounds.
Yes, that's when I was, asked to speak and to bring some books, and I'm looking forward to it. I really am. It's enjoyable. I always love to do that. And in fact, with your sister, I was reading always, all the time. It was wonderful. I hope to go through it again.
Okay, keep busy, and maybe we'll invite you once again. Okay, our program is basically over, and we'll see you acting and doing many more hopeful, successful things. I'm
Thank
sure
you so
are
much.
now in. Okay.
Ciao. Thank you, my friend. Thank you.
Thank you.
Be
We'll
well.
be seeing you.
Thank you. Be well.
This is our program, and we invite you for next week when we will have another Italian-American writers.